All right, guys, we are ready for part 2 of the first lesson here, 7.1. I am going to tell you a story that will help you with the negative exponent property. Now, it is possible to have exponents that are negative numbers. You've not seen them before, unless you've taken algebra before, but they do exist. So I could have x to the negative 2 over y to the negative 3. Okay, so you'll notice that both of my exponents are negative. What this means is that the x feels negatively, he feels sad about being on the top bunk. Well, how could we make him feel better if he doesn't like to be on the top bunk? Let's go ahead and move him to the bottom. When you move him to the bottom, suddenly he feels better. So x squared is now on the bottom bunk. But the question is what about y? He feels negative or bad about being on the bottom bunk. Well, let's go ahead and move him to the top bunk. And now how does he feel? He feels much better. So, in other words, if you see negative exponents, you have to move them in order to make them feel better. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is pause the video, and I want you to summarize my story in your own words. Tell me what you learned from it. Okay, now we're going to go down and we're going to do some practice. So right now you'll notice in question number 11 that I have an x that feels quite negative about where he's at. Well, let's see. I can remember that this is anything you can put over 1. So if x feels badly about being in the top, let's go ahead and move him to the bottom. So now I have my x to the third on the bottom, and if you want to keep your 1 there, you may. And if I take it off of the top, what do you think is left? A 1. There's always something there. So there is a 1 left on top, 1 over x to the third. Now, in question 12, the y feels badly about where he's at. And so again, we can turn this into a fraction, and we're going to move the y down to the bottom so that he doesn't feel so bad. How about the x? Well, he's pretty happy where he is at, so we're going to leave the x on the top. Similarly with question number 13, the 3 is quite happy where he's at, but the x feels bad about the top bunk, so we're going to put him down on the bottom. So this would be 3 over x to the 4th. And question number 14, this x feels badly about being on the top, and the y feels badly about being on the bottom. So I'm basically going to switch them around. So I'm going to have y to the 1st, which you don't have to write the 1, but you may, over x to the 3rd. Again, don't have to write the 3, but you can. Now, remember, you only move the base and the exponent that have negative feelings. Everyone else is happy where they're at, so leave them alone. I want to do, I'm probably going to do the first 3, and then I want you to pause the video and finish up this section by yourself. So question 15, who feels negative? Well, the x feels negative, so he has to be moved. When you move him, the 2 is going to stay where he's at because he's happy. Leave him alone. But the x to the 7th moves down, and now he feels better. So when you move them, then they change and they feel better. Here I'm going to leave the x to the 4th where it's at because it's happy, but the y to the negative 2 needs to come down to the bottom, so y squared. Okay, now with numbers are going to do the same thing that numbers always have done. So it's essentially like you're going to ignore the variables, and you're just going to look at, I'm trying to cover it up here a little bit. You're going to look at your 3 over 4. Can you do 3 over 4 or simplify it? No. So that means you don't do anything with it. You're going to leave the 3 where he is because he's happy, but the x is not happy, so you're going to have to move him to the denominator. Keep the exponent. The 4 is happy in the denominator, but look at the y. The y is not happy about where he's at, so you're going to need to move him to the top. don't forget to keep the exponent on there. Okay, I'm going to do this in the last one here, and then I'm going to let you try some by yourself. So I'm going to ignore these variables, and the only way for me to show you that I'm ignoring them is by crossing them off. 12 over 2 is 12 divided by 2, which is 6. And that is in the numerator, unless for some reason you got a negative exponent on it. And the x feels badly about being on the top, so he has to go to the denominator, so x squared. We already took care of the variables, remember, or the integers, because we did 12 divided by 2 is 6. So now I'm just focusing on the y here, and the y feels badly about being in the denominator, so you're going to move it to the top. So 6y to the 7th over x squared. Go ahead and try the next 4 by yourself. I will put the answers up in a moment, and you may check them. All right, so I have finished up the 4 for you. Make sure your answers are right. If they're not, try to figure out what you did wrong. You may have to go back and watch another part of the video to refresh your memory or try to figure it out. If you really can't figure it out, then bring that question with you to class and ask me. I'll be able to help you. One thing that you really got to remember, very, very important, is regular numbers will always do what numbers have always done. So if we remember back here at number 18, 12 over 2 is 12 divided by 2, which has always given us 6. You don't subtract them, you don't do anything weird. You just do what you've always done with regular numbers. And a lot of people, it helps to cover up the variables. And look only at the numbers. Okay, what I'd like for you to do now is make sure you feel pretty comfortable about this, and then you're going to take a lesson check quiz for 7.1 on My Big Campus. Now, it's going to be multiple choice. There's only going to be 4 to 6 questions on these lesson checks. It will be labeled 7.1 lesson check. Once you get a score, I want you to show it to me, at least for now, because I want to know exactly where you're at when you get there. What your goal is to get at least a 50%. Now, all this is going in the gradebook is as completion. 50%, you did it. You move on. If you don't get a 50%, what that means is that you weren't paying attention when we did the lesson guide, and you actually need to go back and re-watch the lesson and take your own notes on a separate sheet of paper. Then you can go back and do the homework, okay? Remember, this is a big, big, big thing. The point of all of this is to learn the material, not just get through the work, okay? If I just wanted you to do busy work, I would give you busy work. I need you to learn this, all right? Go ahead and get started. Take your lesson quiz. Your assignment is on your calendar. That needs to be turned in. Remember, everything needs to be turned in by Friday, or else the following week I'll come in with my fresh detention slips, study table slips, so that you can come in after school and get the help that you need.